For a long time, we were told a lie, and it was a good lie, a very, very convincing one. It was whispered to us by parents and teachers, broadcast from polished screens and glossy magazines. The lie was simple: work hard, save diligently, and one day you will arrive at a place called retirement, a promised land where all the struggle would end and the system would finally be done with you, a place where at last your life would belong to you. But what if? What if that wasn't a promise at all, but a subtle, invisible cage? Just picture him. His name is Alex. He's the guy who has it all: the corner office with the floor to ceiling windows, the meticulously manicured lawn, the sleek electric car silently waiting in the driveway. From the outside, he is the embodiment of the dream. For 30 years, he ran a quiet, relentless marathon toward a finish line he had been told would set him free. He believed the script, the one that said his right to live, his right to breathe a deep sigh of relief, had to be earned. That peace would only come after a certain number appeared in his bank account, so he chased it. He sacrificed his weekends, his hobbies, the moments with his family that he could never get back, all in pursuit of a magical figure: 1 million, 2 million, more. He wasn't chasing money. Oh no, nobody really is. What he was chasing was permission. Permission to stop performing. Permission to stop pretending he was okay, living a life he secretly hated. But here is where the drama begins. The moment you stop believing in that story, a much, much harder question appears. A question that will force you to face the stark reality of your choices. A question that Alan Watts, the legendary philosopher, would have paused and asked with his warm, deep voice. What if you don't need money to be free? What if you just need the courage to live without a script? This isn't about financial advice. This isn't a lecture on budgeting or investment strategies. This is something far more profound. It is a deep dive into the human condition and the myths that hold us captive. It is a journey to uncover the hidden truths about what we are truly chasing and what we are really running from. Because the problem isn't how much you have, the problem is what you think you need it for. Most people don't actually want wealth. They want safety. They want permission to feel alive without guilt. Before we go any deeper into this, into the history and the stories that will illuminate this truth, take a moment. If this message resonates with you, if you've ever felt this quiet sense of unease, consider subscribing to our channel. Every week, we peel back another layer of the illusions we've been handed to help you find a truer path to, well, to life. We are taught that life is a journey with a destination. That if you just work hard enough, sacrifice long enough, you will eventually arrive, and when you do, then you will live. But what if the purpose of life is not a destination at all? What if the purpose of life is simply to be alive? Not someday, not later, not after your net worth hits a certain milestone, but now. It's a story as old as time itself, whispered in ancient texts and passed down through generations. A chilling, unforgettable warning about the price of postponement. Think back to a tale told in the Bible, the story of the rich young ruler. He was a man who had done everything right. He followed all the laws. He was a pillar of his community. He had accumulated great wealth. He had achieved the very things so many of us are chasing. But he came to Jesus with a question, a desperate plea. He asked, "What must I do to inherit eternal life?" And Jesus looked at him with an immense love and said, "Go, sell all that you have and give to the poor, and you will have treasure in heaven. And come, follow me." Now, you can hear the audible gasp. The young man's face fell. He was stunned. He had asked about eternal life, a spiritual, boundless freedom, and the answer he got was to give up the very thing that made him feel secure. He walked away sorrowfully because he had great possessions. Do you see the tragedy in that? He wasn't afraid of losing his money. He was afraid of losing his identity, the role he had so meticulously built. His wealth wasn't a source of freedom, it was the chain that held him captive. The Buddha himself faced a similar choice. He was not a poor man. He was Siddhartha, a prince, born into a palace of unimaginable wealth and luxury. He had everything a person could ever want: power, privilege, beauty. A life designed for maximum comfort and minimum suffering. Yet he saw something his world had hidden from him: sickness, old age, death. And he realized that all the wealth in the world, all the luxury, was just a distraction from the fundamental truth of existence. So he did the unthinkable. He walked away from it all. He gave up his role, his future, his entire life as a prince, not to gain a reward in the future, but to find a freedom that was only accessible in the present. This is the great unspoken trade. The system teaches us to trade our time now to buy our life later. It teaches us to turn existence into a transaction, a contract, a cold, heartless ledger where you trade the vivid, pulsating moments of your day for a ghost of a promise in the future, the promise that one day you can retire. But as Alan Watts would remind us, you can't buy aliveness. You can't earn it through suffering. You can't stockpile it like a savings account. The problem isn't just that we delay life, it's that we lose the very ability to feel alive at all. According to Gallup's 2023 report, 61% of Americans are emotionally detached from their work. They keep showing up not because they believe in what they do, but because they are terrified of what happens if they stop. They are not working for freedom. They are working to maintain momentum, to keep moving. Because if you stop, you'll have to face the silence. And in that silence, you might have to admit you never wanted this life in the first place. The deeper we go into this, the more uncomfortable it gets. If you're finding that these words are unsettling something deep within you, if they are sparking a question you've been too afraid to ask, then please hit that subscribe button. And if you've already started this journey of questioning the script, share your experience with us in the comments. We are a community of truth seekers, trying to find our way back to our truest selves. In ancient Sufi tales, there's a story about a seeker who spent his life climbing a mountain. He was told that at the very summit was a single rose, the most beautiful in the world. And so for decades he climbed, enduring bitter cold, exhaustion, and loneliness. His eyes were always fixed on the top, on the reward. But when he finally reached the peak, there was no rose. He looked back down the winding path he had taken, and he saw everywhere he had been, the path was lined with the most magnificent, fragrant flowers. But he had been so busy climbing, he never once looked down. He had been so focused on the destination, he missed the entire journey. The seeker, the rich young ruler, the Buddha, they all faced the same fundamental question. Not how much money do I need, but what am I willing to let go of? You see, the most radical act of freedom is not quitting your job. It's retiring from the character you have been forced to play. It's the decision to stop performing a version of yourself that was built to make others comfortable. It's saying, I don't need to prove my worth through busyness. I don't need to chase a finish line that was never mine. Because the greatest prison was never financial. It was psychological. It was the inherited belief that you had to become something more before you were allowed to be yourself. Think about it. From the moment you were old enough to understand words, you were trained not to be, but to become. Not to live, but to prepare. Your entire life was structured around getting ready for the next thing, the next grade, the next job, the next step. You were taught to study hard so that you could get into a good school, get a good job, save money, retire, and maybe, finally, start living. But no one ever told you when that moment would actually begin, because it doesn't. It just keeps moving, just like the horizon. According to a 22 study from the American Psychological Association, the number one cause of burnout in high-functioning adults wasn't workload. It was the feeling of being trapped in responsibility, trapped in being the provider, the achiever, the adult who never breaks character. You weren't told to find yourself. You were told to become someone people could admire, someone who looked like success, even if they felt like a ghost. And this is what no one tells you about retirement. Most people don't actually retire from a job. They retire from a persona. So if retirement isn't the destination, if someday never really arrives, then what? This is where the illusion truly gets shattered. When you finally begin to question the finish line, the world offers you a different kind of comfort, money. Not the fantasy of retirement, but the fantasy of financial freedom, passive income, investment portfolios. They call it security. But what they're really selling is control. They want you to believe that freedom is a number, that if your net worth crosses the right threshold, you'll finally be safe enough to relax, to be present, to live. But Alan Watts warned us, to hold your breath is to lose your breath. And that's what most people are doing, holding their breath until the money feels like enough. But here's the tragedy. Many people do reach the number and still don't know how to live because freedom was never a product. It was a practice, it was a way of being they never learned. It's about creating space in your day for what Watts might call mini retirements, moments where nothing needs to be earned, achieved, or justified, moments that aren't useful but are alive. A walk with no destination, a conversation with no agenda, silence without guilt, stillness without shame. The people who understand this live differently. They stop waiting for permission. They stop optimizing every minute. They realize the only thing standing between them and the life they long for is the belief that they need more before they are allowed to live it. So ask yourself, have you practiced being free at all? Because if you've spent your life holding your breath for the future, you'll get there, gasping. True freedom will feel like a foreign language, not because it's impossible, but because you never gave yourself the silence to learn it. You don't need to retire to feel free. You need to stop outsourcing your rhythm to a world that never learned how to breathe. You just need to stop waiting for permission and start paying attention to the quiet truth inside you that has been waiting to be heard. Because in the end, you don't need more money, you need fewer illusions.